A very good afternoon or morning. Sorry for the delay, but we're happy to start with the next session. With us today, we have Andrew Bales-Collins, our Senior Product Management, also looking after the PitStop product line. My name is Pete, and we're the Focus Marketing team. If you have never followed a Virtual Safari session before, our Virtual Safari is a series of webinars intended to educate people about industry trends, the market, and whatsoever, but also to show off our new products and new innovations. And one of those new innovations we are actually launching as we speak, right, Andrew?
Correct, Pete.
Yes. So today we have launched PitStop 2020, and our product manager, Andrew, who I don't really think needs a big introduction, we'll showcase the new features and we'll talk to you about why we believe that this is actually a great version and how it's going to take pre-flight into a new era, right, Andrew?
Oh, absolutely, Pete. Absolutely.
I'm going to hand off the presentation to you so you can get started.
Okay. So I'll share my screen. As I go through, you're welcome to ask questions. I will try and answer them as best I can, or I may follow up afterwards, because one thing we are short of is time. To go through everything in the version would take probably an hour and a half, because I did it a couple of days ago to some of our partners, but we'll focus on some of the main stuff, and we'll see how we go. So good afternoon, good morning. I recognize some of the names on the list, some old colleagues, some friends, some customers, so a true international audience, so welcome aboard. I want to quickly talk about a couple of other things first, because it's not often we get to talk to you. So first thing to know is that every month I do, and my colleagues do, 3 monthly webinars on PitStop and PDF related products. So the PDF related questions. So this is first Wednesday of every month, same time, 4 o'clock Central European time. You only have to register once, and we've got you. You're in it forever. The registration is via the InFocus website, and I'll show you where that is in a second. And the thing about this is the agenda is set by you. So you can submit questions to me. My email is there, andrewb@infocus.com. And very often we also get topics submitted on the day, which makes for some fun. And they're all recorded. And they're not designed to be support, they're designed to be education. So if there's anything you ever wanted to know about how something worked, or where you handling a particular file in the best way, that's what that's all about. And we've been doing it now for about 5 years, so there's almost 60 hours of webinars that you can go through. To get involved, go to our website, go to the events page, and you'll see a little logo like that. Click on that, and you can register. And the next session is the 6th of May, and hope to see you then. The second thing I want to mention is the InFocus forum, which is probably one of our best kept secrets. This is about all of our products and is pretty active. So if you want to join, or you just want to have a look, you don't have to be a member to browse through it. But obviously, if you want to ask a question or contribute, then you need to. But that's active, and very, very active, actually. And the other thing to mention is our InFocus e-learning. So this is currently free. All the courses are free at the moment due to the current coronavirus situation. So again, if you go to our website, if you see this button here, learn, you can click on there. You need an InFocus ID to log in, but you'll have that already from activating the software. If not, you can just make one and then you'll be able to get all your access to all the e-learning there as well. And the other thing I should mention, which I haven't got a slide for, is that to support the monthly webinars, we have a LinkedIn group, which is the official PitStop user group, which again has been running for about 5 years. And that is a very useful way to me to get information from and give information to you. So we often share a lot of action lists and things like that on there. So if you're not involved in any of those and you'd like to learn a little bit more and have a mechanism for finding out things, one of those places is where you want to be. So hopefully see you on there, and look forward to your contributions. Okay, so let's look at PitStop 2020. I'm going to flick through what I consider to be the most, the major version, major features, should we say. So we've got a combination of manual tools, new manual things, new automation things, and also something very new technology-wise, which has actually been patented. So let me start by putting up the inspector. And the first thing to note is that in this panel here, this option to work with line art, work with vector shapes, that's been in there for a couple of versions now. But as you can see, it's got some friends that have been added. So let me just talk you through. If you're using action lists, you may already use these in an automated way, but we've added them now manually so that they can be more efficiently used when working interactively. So the first one is to offset a path. So here we have a closed path. So it could be a die line, could be a cutter guide, could just be a shape. And effectively what you can do is you can just enlarge that shape, or you can reduce it by putting in a value here. So if you're looking to do sort of a choker white underprint, or to spread a cutter guide or something like that, then that's very, very simple. Select the object or objects that you want, and then you can just enlarge or reduce them there. Similarly, this object at the bottom is a compound shape, and by that what I mean is it's not a red square or red rectangle with two white objects sitting on top of it. It's actually got holes in it. So these are joins, and if I place an object underneath, then it will show through. And here you can see that if I do the same thing, and I'll use the wireframe view to illustrate what's happening. If we make the shape bigger, what we do is we make the outside bigger and the inside shape smaller, because we're actually working on the object as a whole. So that works very well. And if we work the other way, then you can see the object gets smaller, but the holes inside get bigger. So a couple of tools there, very interesting, very useful. And the fact that they can easily be done now by selecting an object and then clicking on these two tools, that would be, it's been very well received by our beta testers. Another feature which was available as an action, but is now available as an inspector tool, is stroke to fill. Now, if you're working with these tools for combining line art, which I think in Illustrator are called the Pathfinder tools, it's not going to work on a stroke, because a stroke is just a single path with a width. So what we can do now is, again, just click on the object, and I'll do them one at a time. I then convert that stroke to a rectangle. So it was a line, now it's a rectangle, and now that it's one or all rectangles, what I can do is use the initial tools here, and so I'm make a copy. There you can see I've made a one shape by combining these three together. So working with vectors, there's a lot of new tools. in 2020 to help. Another tool which we have for working as an action list is now also available in the inspector. And just to show you what I mean here, I'm going to go to wireframe, and you can see this is the media box we're looking at here. Let's make it a little bit smaller. So we're looking at the media box, and I'll use the tool that we have that shows if there's any objects outside of the page boxes. So there you can see that all 3 or 4 of these objects actually go over the edge of the page. Now, what you can do with this new version is you can click on an object, and I'll turn the original objects off. And you've got the option of clipping it to either transparency group, a form, to a mask, or to a page box. So I've got all 3 options on, and if I clip, you'll see what it does is it clips the object to the page box, even the ellipse, which is obviously not square. If I clip that, you'll see that's clipped, and again here with a blend, that's clipped. Now the one at the bottom is a clip, and just to show you what I mean by that, what we have is a green square, and it's got a mask on it which is making the circle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select everything, click that, and then you see you end up with just the clip shape. So obviously a lot of files have got content that straddles the page boxes, and sometimes if some of it's not necessary, you can get rid of it. So this is a very useful tool for doing that. Now the only thing to remember is that when you do that, it's doing, as part of the process, it's doing this converting a stroke to a fill. So that happens automatically. So you just need to be careful when selecting objects. Things like cutter paths and die lines, you don't want to select those and turn them to a fill, because obviously that will make them not very useful. So the fact you can select different objects and work on them is a big benefit. You only work on what you need to work on. The bottom tool in the stack, which is one you may have seen a video for, is a tracing tool. So if you've been around for a while like me, you will probably remember a tool called Streamline by Adobe. And I think it's actually now incorporated into Illustrator of Live Trace, called Live Trace. And it traces raster or shapes to produce vector paths. So the way this works in PitStop is that you can select any object. It doesn't have to be an image, it can be anything. So you can select text and graphics and images and combinations of them as you see fit. And then once you've selected that object, you can specify a resolution, because what it does is it converts everything to a bitmap in the background, and then it traces that bitmap. So if I trace this image and then delete the image, you'll see it's given me a series of vector shapes. Okay. Now, a few options here to make you aware of. I'll just revert this. You noticed when I did that it retained all the white holes inside the object. I've also got the option to turn that off, so I can just say to ignore the white holes. When I trace it again, I end up with just the outline. You also have another option where you can do the same thing, but you can invert the result of the trace. So you're not actually tracing the object, you're actually making a negative of the object. And when you do that, you can then select a page box to be the outer edges. So I'm going to use the media box here, And of course, the fact that we're using all the boxes, the art box is particularly useful sometimes because that's not often used. So you can use that for other things. And that could be very useful in this scenario. So let's just trace that and you'll see what happens. Maybe it doesn't look any different until I fill it. And then you can see we've actually got a negative of the shape. And then of course, if you wanted to, you could then come in here with the offset path and choke it a little bit underneath the image as well if you need to do that, or in the case of a white underprint, you just want to pull it maybe underneath a little bit, or even maybe spread it sometimes. So that gives you the opportunity to do that. Now, the tracing also has a couple of other options. So you can ask it to ignore small objects. This can be quite useful if you have things like JPEG artifacts and stray pixels floating around. And also you might want to trace something, but then only keep the biggest one. That's also a possibility. So this is manual work, obviously selecting things and then tracing them. But one of the big benefits comes from when you automate this. So what I'm going to do is show you how this works with an action list. So action lists can be used in PitStop Pro, PitStop Server can be used within Switch. And one of the methods for making customized checks and fixes. So let me get rid of that and pull up my action list panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace this car. Now, if any of you have done this kind of automotive work, you'll notice it's got a black drop shadow. And one of the things about doing this kind of work, and I used to be quite heavily involved in some of this in a previous life, you don't want the shadow to be for color, you only want it to be black, so that when it's printed it stays neutral, it doesn't go muddy or blue or red. So what I'm going to do is I'm only going to trace the CMY. I'm only going to trace that and I'm going to ignore the black. And the way that I've done this in the action list that I've constructed, here it is. This is the tracing action. Exactly the same features you saw just now with one additional one. And this is where you select the separations. If you want to work with spot colors, you don't need this. That happens anyway, but this enables you to work with process separations. So as you read this, you'll see that it needs to be preceded by two selects. So one to define the separations or colorants, and the second one to define the objects. So here we're saying ignore the black. The object selection is just select all because it doesn't matter here. It could be select images or select color images, and then trace. And then I'm picking the trace up, adding a fill, removing a stroke, adding a spot color fill, and then just setting it to overprint. And let's click that. And you can see the result. Now Acrobat unfortunately doesn't update, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save that to the desktop and give it a name, quit, and then if I open it, you'll see there's my varnish, and if I toggle my black off, you can see it's there, and job done. So that's one use, varnishes, underprints, that kind of thing. I think that's a pretty common way of doing that, but there's other things you can do as well. And this is a good example. This is a kind of challenge we often get, and when I received this, I thought, I wonder if I can use the tracing on it. So I'll show you what happens. This is a cutter guide for a table, and the problem, well, the first problem with it when I got it was the complexity. It's got 6,000 points on the path. So the cutting table is not going to be very happy with that. But then when I investigate a little bit further, it's not a closed path, it's a series of dashes. So each one of these is a separate path. So that is next to useless, and something would need to be done in order for that to be used. So what I did was I traced it, and I used a feature we have existing, which is called closed gaps in contours, which was designed to close paths for cutting tables, etc. So select the stroke, close the gaps, select the stroke again, trace it, change the color to a spot color, use the offset path to pull it under the existing cutter guide, because obviously it's tracing the outside extremities. Match the line weight of the stroke, set the stroke to overprint, bring it to the front and put it on a layer. Okay. It was a lot quicker to say it than it was to make it. And there you see the result. And let's have a look. And you can't really see it too bad. It's not too bad there. You can see it's done a pretty good job. The only thing that I noticed was that you get these right angles and it's slightly curved. Now you can have a feature to one of the coordinates can adjust that, but the fact I'm at quite a high magnification, I thought was probably okay. And to look at the resulting paths, if I get rid of my new one by turning off the layer that it was on, just open this up a little bit. I'll select my black and white one. You can see 6,000 points. I'll get rid of that by deleting it. Bring in my new one. It's a closed path, 500 points. Okay, maybe that's not great, but it's certainly better than 3,000. So it's got a multitude of uses, but it's been very well received and a lot of really good feedback on it. So I hope that's useful for you. The next thing to show you, and I've got probably about 15-20 minutes left, is something very, very new. So this is obviously a page of logos, and I should just say that these logos have got no affinity at all with InFocus or PitStop. You shouldn't look upon them as anything validating us or anything else. They're just a load of logos I found on the web, and they're all the result, of course, copyright of their respective owners, but they make for a good demo. So a PDF basically consists of shapes with fills and strokes or pixels and overprint and knockout and transparency effects and things like that. But there is no real understanding of a logo or a shape or anything like that. And what we have done with PitStop is we now have the ability to pre-flight for what we're calling visual objects. So it can be pixels, it can be shapes, it can be anything. And I think this is so important moving forward that we've actually patented it. We have a patent pending for it, because the world is getting more and more automated. There's less and less time to check things. And the ability to use machine vision, which is what this is computer vision technology, similar to that you find in self-driving cars. Very, very fast moving area of technology. And we're really happy to have incorporated it in PitStop. So for instance, if I wanted to know, am I using the Starbucks logo in a page, you can pre-flight the file and it will tell you, yes, you have a Starbucks logo in your page. Now, what it does is it uses key points, and this is important to understand what it's doing, because it's not analyzing pixels or anything like that. So this is the key points that will be used to analyze the PitStop logo. And you can see above one of the images we used in our videos, that analyzes an image and then looks for similarities to find if that image is used. Now, I mention that because you're going to see some strange things and you need to understand what's going on. So I'm looking for this PEGI logo, which is an age restriction used particularly in the computer gaming industry. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the action. Now, what it's doing is it's making an image of the whole page, and then it's going to analyze that page to find if there are matching key points to the object that I'm looking for. And it's obviously the more complex the page, the longer it takes. But of course, if you have an idea of where the logo should be or where the graphical shape should be, then you can restrict the shape to that, as I did with the Starbucks logo. So here you can see it's actually not only found the one I was looking for, it's found the other two. And the reason is that if you look at those three graphics, they look very similar. Same URL, same basic design. This one's a 12 with a different color, the other one's a 7 and one's an 18. So what happens is it's using a similar sort of technology to the way that we would think and saying, yes, they are similar to the master. So what we have is the ability to restrict the check as to how accurate it is to the one we're looking for. So I'm going to check for a match of more than 90%. And I'm going to run out of time. So I would invite you to join me on the future webinar on May the 6th, because we'll be going through more features in a bit more detail. And there's quite a lot to show. But you'll be seeing that information on our website. So what it's done now is it's found the one that we were actually looking for. So to use another slightly different demonstration, I'm going to look here for the Lego logo. And you can see here, just check my settings. I'm not restricting anything here. I'm looking for the Lego logo, and you can see I've got the Lego logo in various sizes and rotated and even partially cropped at the bottom. And what the software is doing now is it's making an image of the whole page, and then it's looking through that whole page to find similarities to the Lego logo, see if there's any key points that match that logo. And you can see that it found 6. It even found the rotated ones. It even found the crop one. And the reason is it's doing what we would do as humans. We're saying there's enough information there for me to see that looks like a Lego logo. So what you can actually do is reverse the check. You can actually say if it's, tell me if it's found, tell me if it wasn't found. And what I'm going to do here is say, only find ones that aren't rotated, because as you probably know, in some corporate identities, rotation should be 0 or 90 degrees. There's limitations. And find anything that's less than 90%. So in other words, find things that look like this logo, but are bad, don't match exactly. And again, it's going to rasterize the page, and then it's going to produce a result. Now, this lends itself more to automation, because of course, if you're opening a file in PitStop Pro, then you're looking at it manually. But if you've got many, many documents to look at, then of course PitStop Server, which will process multiple documents at the same time, has a completely different value proposition. So for brands, even if the customer changes their logo and wants to make sure they don't use their old one, if you're retiring pack shots, because it will also work on images, so a lot of potential here for a new kind of pre-flight in the future. We're not checking really the technical aspects of the file, we're checking the content, and that's a new direction in which I think we'll be developing the software. So I want to just quickly show you another one. I've got about 10 minutes left. We have a new check for bleed. The old check worked on an individual object basis. So what that meant was that files would error because one object didn't bleed when the others did. So for instance, a file like this, where I have my trim box as the dark blue line, this would error in the old bleed check because these circles weren't bleeding enough. Whereas, of course, the blue gives adequate bleed for them. So too many false hits in the old check. The new one works on a page basis. So if I show it to you, it's a bit like the add bleed feature. Needs a bleed box and a trim box. And what it effectively does is make an image of the page and then checks to make sure that the elements bleed enough. And then what it gives you is a preview. So this is much, much more reliable to use in an automated way. There you can see at the bottom, a yellow tint at the bottom doesn't bleed. And there you can see on the left and right, I've also not got any bleed. So it will pick up individual edges and things like that. So that's a really big step forward in checking for bleed. A lot of work going on with bleed at the moment, actually, for future versions as well. And then another new feature is overlay. So the ability to overlay one document on top of another lends itself more to automation than PitStop Pro, but of course it's definitely possible in PitStop Pro. It's an action list, and the way it works is in a lot of older actions, you needed to embed the content actually in the action, and that's something we've improved with the add copy graphic and insert pages action. You don't need to put the graphics in there now. You can actually bring them in on a file path. In fact, maybe I can quickly show you those as well while we're in that kind of neck of the woods. So if I bring up the copy graphic, you used to have to grab a graphic. Now you can pull it in on a file path, and the same when you add pages. That also now can come in on a file path, and both of those also now work on variables. So you can use the Boolean switch in PitStop server. So if you have one action and then just pull the graphic or the pages you need at one time. So that's another big step. And while I'm here, I'll quickly show you another one that a lot of customers wanted as an action, and that's find and replace text. So you can automate that now, and again you can work with variables, so you can put the text you want to find and then the text you want to replace it with. So that's good, 3 features out the way in one go. So with the overlay, what you do is you've got your file path and you pick a page box that you want to use for your positioning. You set your target page, so this is the page that you have open or the page that's being processed. You set a media page box here, and the two are aligned, and then you have options of how they should fit together in case they're different sizes. So you have a whole set of options there and some alignment options, and then you can put the page you're overlaying, you can put it on the top and on the bottom. So I have a file ready to go there. And you see what it's done is it's just overlaid the black onto the template that's there. Another nice feature is I've got a 48-page blank here, but I've got 2-page text, front and back. So just the terms and conditions and some text. And what I can do with the action is, if there's a mismatch between the pages, I can get it to repeat the pages until it fills the job. So that's page 1. If I go to page 48, you'll see it's just gone through and filled the template file. 5 minutes left before Pete kicks me off. So what else have we got? One area and a couple of things that we've got in here to help you with complex files. There's a new check for corrupt images. There's a new check for the number of images on a page. Excess number of images can cause slow processing. One thing we also know is that tiling patterns can be abused and also can cause production issues. So you see, if you look at this file, in the purple, the green, the pink, and the blue, we have a tiling pattern. You can see the complexity of the shapes. But if I look at the wireframe, it's just a fill. The problem with these tiling patterns is they can have anything in there, any color space, literally anything. So what we have now is we have a check for tiling patterns, which will tell you that the problem exists, and you know that they're there. And then there's also a selection, which means that you can actually pick them up. And then one of the nice fixes is to be able to rasterize them, or maybe even color convert them. So depending on the type of work you do, you might want to automate that, or you might want to know about the problem and then come back and have another look at it. So yeah, that's that one. And then in the area of complex files, again, there's another nice check. We had in a previous version a check for the amount of nodes, so the amount of points on a page. So if they get too high, then again, that can cause problems, complex Illustrator graphics and things like that. We have a similar check now in that it works within a defined area. So it can help find clusters of points, like logos and graphics, for instance. So you can refine or define a size of area, define a number of nodes, and then you can either, in this case, rasterize to convert them to an image, or, and this is actually a default one we're shipping, you can find them and then it logs a message to tell you that they exist. And then you can, of course, analyze the file, look at it, and then make some decisions based on it. So I've got 3 minutes left. A couple of other things to know. Some operating system changes. Obviously, Apple bringing out a new OS every year. Some of those have been dropped, but you'll find information about those on the release notes. Windows 7, we mentioned last year that Windows 7 would be dropped in this version, so that's taken place. And also Windows 2008 R2 is no longer supported. So before you upgrade, just check the system requirements, make sure that you're good. The software is actually, as Pete said, it's been released today. Before you install it, just make sure that you have a valid license. It's a new license, new major version. If you bought your version or received a license in the grace period, it's very likely you already have a PitStop 2020 license. You'll be able to see that in the About panel. If you haven't got a license and you have a maintenance contract, then your new license key is on the way to you and should not be very long. And then you'll, of course, be able to use this new license and get going. If you can't wait, then of course you always have the option of running a trial, which will run for 28 days, and then you can, of course, after that 28 days, your license would have arrived and you can add it. But just be aware that if it doesn't arrive and you need to go back, it's a manual process to take everything out to go back to the older version. So yeah, just think about that before you jump. And that is it, I think. 45 minutes on the dot.
Yeah, you've done well.
I have. I crammed it all in, and I even missed a few things. So I would encourage you to look at the documentation. There's a lot there, as always.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
people can tell you where to find it.
Yeah. Andrew, I must say, I've got too many questions to handle in the remaining 10 minutes that we have for this Q&A. So just for everyone, if your question is not discussed in the coming 10 minutes, I promise that I will make Andrew get back to you via email. And that is now on file. So Andrew, you have to do that now.
Of course.
As Andrew has already mentioned, so a lot of questions came in, like when is this available? It is available now. We have updated our website, and when I look at my inbox, I think that notification emails to customers who are opted in to product updates were sent about halfway through this session. So if you have a license, your new keys should have arrived. If not, contact your reseller. If you're on a subscription, you can just download, install, and sign in, of course. So as far as availability, it's there. Today we released it. Andrew, a couple of questions. Most of them are about the visual pre-flight. First of all, how does it check color of certain logos? Does it only check the visual appearance, or does it also check color?
At the moment, it only checks the visual appearance. The underlying technology works in grayscale, actually. So it's looking at shapes and contrast and histograms. The brands we've spoken to, of course, want to ensure color matching. And as I mentioned, this is a very, very fast moving technology. So we have that as a very much a future request.
Yeah, okay. Another one is because it rasterizes the page, will it
Yes.
find logos that are hidden away behind a crop box or behind another object?
That are hidden away? No, it works on the visual appearance.
Yeah.
So it's actually looking at what we're looking at. So
Yep.
think of it as a human looking at the file and making decisions about the file. That's the best. It's not entirely technically accurate, but I think it's the best way to think about it. And also, while I'm on the subject, do not expect it to check paragraphs of text and things like that. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to work on shapes. And also the shapes must have a certain complexity. So it's not going to find circles and squares and things like that. But the action will tell you when you add your graphic if it's not complex enough.
Yep. That was, by the way, another question. Can you add your own
I'm sure
graphic? So yes, you can.
you can add your own graphics. Yeah, you grab them out of the PDF and then you add them to the graphic, and that's the way it works.
Yep. Some other questions. Is there a way in PitStop to delete objects that are masked and not visible? But I think that is already the case for a year.
And that was in a previous version. And if you want to email me and come to the session in May, I'd be more than happy to talk about that.
Okay. Well, we will get back to that on email. And I have one more question about the overlay PDF. How does it differ from the existing insert PDF feature?
We have an insert PDF and we have an overlay PDF in PitStop Pro. So in PitStop Pro, the overlay PDF only works on a single page. And the insert PDF, I think you mean the add pages, which inserts the pages into a document. As you saw today, this one puts one document on top or underneath another document. And that's something we've not been able to do before.
Okay. I'm just going through the questions.
Yeah, you go.
We had the majority. Maybe one important one that might be on a lot of people's mind is about compatibility. Is PitStop 2020 compatible with Acrobat 11?
No, it's not. That's a very good point. It's Acrobat stopped support of it in 2017. We've held on for a couple of years, but technically now we had to make the break at some point, and we've had to do it. Now, I had some customers in the beta who asked me that question, and I've said it's not tested, it's not supported, but it may work. It's definitely not supported. At your own risk, you're more than welcome, of course, to download the trial and try it. But it is not officially supported on Acrobat 11 anymore. It's definitely not supported on Acrobat 10 and will not work. 11, it's not supported officially.
Okay, good to know. I think we've covered most of the questions. Again, if we were not able to discuss your question, we will get back to you via email. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you, Pete.
And I guess for you, it's on to PitStop 2021.
Already started.
I wouldn't have guessed otherwise. Okay, time limits us to go.
Pete, that's a very good point. Just before we sign off, if anybody has any feature requests or anything they'd like to see in the next version, drop me an email or turn up to the workshop in May and let me know. Now is a perfect time to get your requests in.
Okay, I guess people are already writing some emails right now.
I'm sure they are.
Okay, time limits us from really going into the rest of the schedule. Today we have one session left where HP will show you their new app for Switch, which will allow you to drive a full VDP workflow. And we have actually, apart from the very last week, published the entire Virtual Safari schedule on mfocus.com/virtual safari. So if you are wondering which next sessions are coming up, I would invite you to take a look there. We've got everything except for 3 sessions at the very end that are actually still a secret.
Oh, is that one of mine?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, you're doing more innovations and more stuff than PitStop, right? So it's time we let people know about that.
Innovating, Pete, yeah.
Okay. Andrew, again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And have a good day. Stay safe.